Now, accept with major revisions and reject if there is any, like from looking back at my experience of reviewing, if there is any potential in the paper that I feel can be further developed, and if in my estimation, I think the authors are capable of that kind of revision in terms of whether they have the data, I feel that they can go back to and maybe analyze the data again to answer a part of the research question that was not answered in my estimation, or they can ask a different research question from the data that they have collected. Or I feel that maybe if they could have interpreted the theory a little differently than what they have done. So in other words, if I feel that there is scope and it is feasible, it is practically possible for the authors to take a different approach to the paper than currently what they have taken, I usually give accept with major revisions. Unless the paper is really out of line in terms of, one of the things that I teach my students also in the class, and you would remember, is that first and foremost thing I look for in a paper is that the fit between what question is being asked, what method is being used, and what results are being reported. So if there is lack of fit in those areas or between those areas, that kind of raises a red flag for me. And if I feel there's a lot of kind of, lack of synchronization between those, the research question being asked and the reports, the results, I give a reject. But I feel that if the authors have done a decent job of, proposing methods and answering the research questions, but they would benefit from maybe doing a little bit more data analysis or doing a little bit more discussion or interpreting the theories that they've used in a little different light. So then I give, accept with major revisions. Now, it so has happened that maybe a paper has received accept for major revisions, and then the second round, when the authors respond to those revisions, they haven't done a good job. So that's a very important step for the authors. They need to take the review that they receive in the best way possible and try to respond, because that's an opportunity for the authors. If they miss, for some reason, if they do not make good use of it, then in the second round, I may give a reject because I feel that the authors either didn't take the review seriously enough, or they themselves feel that they cannot address the review feedback. So then they're kind of telling me that there's no way forward with this paper in this particular journal. But even if it's a reject, I try to give as much feedback possible so that if they're trying to rework the paper for another journal, they can have enough feedback to kind of fall back on. There's one favorite thing I also share with my students, is one of my professors once told me, is reject is revise and resubmit for another journal. So just because I'm rejecting a paper, giving a one-liner saying this paper is not worth it, is not in the good spirit of reviewing. Even if I'm rejecting, I try to give substantive feedback or reasoning as to why I think that it might not be feasible, that the authors really have to do a major, maybe go back and collect additional data. That might not be feasible in the cycle of publication for this particular journal, and hence I'm rejecting, but they're more than welcome to, use my feedback and do the additional due diligence that's needed to be done to maybe rework this for another journal.